writing for dads, sometimes I have a little bit of this feeling like I don't want to be too prescriptive, because in reality, it feels like I'm writing to myself. And so I want to have like the right distance to the material that I'm producing, because some of these things that I write about, I don't feel like I master at all. Sometimes I have an idea, and let's say I'm trying to deploy the idea in my day-to-day life. Most of the times, it's things that are work in progress, right? So the idea of the podcast is to bounce reflections around the topic of fatherhood, and maybe also discuss topics that maybe are on my mind that I want to write about, but I don't feel like I have clarity yet. And that's one actually that I, maybe to open the conversation, there is one that I want to write about. I've been talking to some of my friends who have been away with their families. One of them actually was in the wood, like cabin in the wood, like typical Swedish, no running water, no toilet, like dry toilet.
Yeah.
And he has 3 kids. I think the youngest is, let's see, how old is she now? Probably 2.5. So it's a little bit of a circus. And
Sure.
and even the brothers who are not in a situation that is that, let's say, that foreign to the day-to-day life, you can tell that there is something happening when you're stuck with your family. And I'm saying stuck, stuck in a good way, right? I love being with my family, but right now both kids are home. It's a lot of noise. It's a lot of activity. It's very difficult to focus on something like more than like an hour without being disrupted.
Sure.
My daughter is calling me across the house, Papa. And I think that there is something. So I'm just like running through the house, and she's like, the mosquito net is open. I'm like, you don't need to call me for that.
Sure.
And I told her, you're welcome to come to my office whenever you want to tell me something. But if you call me across the house, it needs to be urgent, or
Right.
And like an hour later, she's like, Papa. I'm like, what's happening? I run through the house, and she's like, I think I have the solution to this chess puzzle. And I'm like, you can come to my office whenever. Stop calling me across the house.
Very proud, very happy, but maybe next time.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. That's exactly that.
Right.
So I've been thinking a lot about this idea of like how challenging it can be for us, especially us entrepreneurs. Like I have to work from home most of the time, and I love being with my family. Don't get me wrong, but it uses more energy than like a normal day, like a typical day. And,
sure.
And that's a little bit of a struggle. And I see as well that for some of my friends that have been away with their families, they come back and they are still tired. So,
yes. Yeah.
So I know, you have 4 kids, maybe to give a little bit of context. But you were away. Yeah. So how did that go for you?
Yeah. So we back in 2020 started fostering our kids. So we had 4 kids, and just for the listeners. And we were foster parents to this group of siblings, 4 siblings, and they were 8, 6, 7, and 5 at the time. 8, 7, 6, 5 at the time. And so now they are almost 13, but 12, 11, 10, and 9. And so we adopted them 2 years later. So actually, a few weeks ago, we celebrated 2 years of adoption. And so as I texted you, we live here in Georgia in the United States, and we went up to the mountains and got a cabin. It had plenty of running water and everything, so it wasn't the same situation, but it was a cozy, cabin kind of thing. And I've heard people say, traveling. There's no such thing as vacationing with kids. It's traveling without all your stuff. Because you're like, all my infrastructure is behind. And we especially given our kids' background, we really leaned into structure. Like that was a big part of what we learned in our training with foster parents. Like that was routine and structure, and we even had whiteboards with like, here's the schedule for the day, stuff like that, which they loved, and that really helped them like to settle into our home and stuff like that. And so anytime that we do anything out of the ordinary, it's like it's always a struggle, which is funny because we are always doing stuff out of the ordinary. because there's no real such thing as that. My wife and I have adapted a little bit of a mantra at the house, which is there's no such thing as a normal week because every
Yeah.
week is like a call from school or a doctor's appointment or, some kind of, I'm someone's out of the office here at work and so I have to cover for them. So I can't cover. My wife's got to do this and she got some teaching engagement that she has to go handle or whatever. And it really does boil down to that. As you were sharing kind of like those moments that are right now we're in the middle of summer break and I feel like it's been the summer of apology because I've been apologizing to everyone about like I'm so sorry. I'm like in chaos right now and like I'm so far behind on everything and my wife works, I work, I have a small business and it's just kind of a startup and so there's a lot that it requires of me. But I'm also dad. And so that's it's chaotic, and it's one of those things that as you're saying that, like, how do we kind of reconcile that? Um, I don't know that there's definitely not a one size fit all answer, but there's also like a really cool opportunity, I think, which is like demonstrating to our kids. Oh, hey mother, demonstrating to our kids what it's like to live well in a state of uncertainty, if you can say that, where it's like,
Yeah.
um, even the example with your daughter, I have this all the time too at the house where the kids are going, we call it mommies per minute. Like the mommies per minute is too high right now because it's just like, it's like mommy with four kids. It's just like, it's like not, and I'm like, too many mommies per minute. We got to bring that down. We got to make sure that these are, and, and you do have those like constant interruptions where you're like, is this a real like I don't want to come off as terse or irritated, but I'm trying to focus. I do a lot of programming. I'm like end of stage coding, and my mind's like I'm already struggling, and my kid's like,
Yeah.
hey. I'm like, yes, and they're like, look at this cool picture. I'm like, so cool, love it. I want to have the right reaction, but I'm also like, if I'm being honest, I don't know, that was a little similar, but
Fireworks.
if I'm being yes, if I'm being honest, it's a little irritating, it's a little anxious, and learning how to demonstrate that well. And part of it's kind of like, just a kind of little handle for us has been me being very honest with my kids and being like, I want to give you my absolute full attention. My kids are a little bit older again, so we didn't actually have them at toddler stage, so I can't really speak to that age. But um, I'm able to go, buddy. I want to see that. It sounds awesome. Let me finish up what I'm working on here so I can give you my absolute full attention,
Yeah.
because I don't want to be, I talk to them a lot about being distracted because that's something I struggle with. And I'll say, I want to be able to give you my full attention. I need to finish this real quick. And, I'll bring them to work with me or take them to a coffee shop to work with me. And I'll be like, okay, now's the time of day to put my headphones on. I got to get this thing focused and do this so that I can, be present, even if it's just like 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there. But I need to be able to like, instead of just being like, either one side of the pendulum, which is like, get away, you rotten kids, and I'm working all the time, and I'm, some kind of, workaholic, or where I am like stressed and anxious all the time because I don't ever get anything done because I'm so worried about my kids thinking that I'm not there for them. So there's like that
Yeah.
balance, I think.
With my daughter earlier today, so the first time when I realized that she was calling me because the mosquito net was open, I felt very frustrated, like irritated because I was in the middle of something, it disrupted
Yeah.
me, and then I have to get back to work, and I have to try to find the flow again, which was already interrupted a few times this morning. But the second time that I went, I could feel that I was boiling inside, and
Mm.
it's very difficult because, well, I don't want to be boiling, she's my
Right.
priority, and I
Right.
want her to feel like she's my priority. And I think it's a tricky thing with kids because you want them to be the priority, you want them to know that they are the priority, but you also want them to understand that they should not abuse it. And I think
Yeah.
that's like,
Yeah.
it's such a difficult thing to explain to a 4-year-old like my kid, but even to an
Yeah.
older kid, I would imagine, because you want them to feel like, yeah, of course I'm here for you. Like, of course your chess puzzle is way more important than the small fraction of the work that I was trying to do right now. But at the same time, I want her to learn that she needs to self-regulate, so that she doesn't. It's like what is it? With great powers comes great responsibilities.
Very responsibility, yeah. Yeah.
It's like you are my top priority, but please don't abuse it, or learn to use it. Something I've noticed as well, talking to my friends, is that when you get in a confined space with your family for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and it's a lot to do, and you don't have. You were talking about the importance of the routine, which is like even stronger in your house maybe than in mine. At the end, like let's say the first week, maybe you tend to manage to keep in mind that you're on vacation and that, like it's okay that things are a little bit chaotic. But suddenly, like it's like a battery, right? It's draining your battery of patience, and then you're at the end of the second week or the third week. If you haven't been able to really disconnect and enjoy the vacation, maybe you have less patience than when you arrive at the cabin or at the whatever the vacation place that you're in. So that's also like a little bit of a struggle. I think the first, when my youngest, he's 18 months and he's not going to school yet, but my daughter is going to preschool. When she went on vacation, and we pulled her out of school a little bit early because there was a lot of sicknesses going on. So she's been at home for like, let's see, maybe 3 months now. And the first, like the first few weeks, it was so awesome because I could work and then I could just like go and spend some time with her. But now it's been 3 months,
That's right,
and
yeah.
I have a 18-month-old that loves running around and screaming, and even my daughter. I mean, she has a lot of energy, and if she doesn't spend this energy, she's just like a tornado. Yeah. Even though she's a calm kid. So, did you feel the same way? Like, you didn't stay very long when you went away now, but maybe the previous experience. Did you feel like this battery thing?
I think for us, that was a great week. We actually had some kind of personal tragedy stuff that happened right at the beginning of the week. And so it was actually a beautiful week for us. And it was a celebration of 2 years of adoption. And so also, one of the things that I have learned over I was in youth ministry for a lot of years too, worked with teenagers, and I was in an organization that did children's stuff with churches and stuff like that. And so one of the things I have learned is to understand the different phases of kids' lives and how there's different roles at different points. And what I mean by that is the first, we actually take this summer little week vacation. We don't have all the resources in the world, don't have all the time in the world to take like big, long, huge vacations, but we do try to take like this one vacation at least every summer where we go away to a cabin for the week. And when we first started doing it, it was very different 4 years ago than it is now. And that's because my kids are a little bit older. And so like this time it was like so incredibly fun, and they had all these board games there. We got board games too, but they had a bunch there at this cabin that we were staying at. And we played board games and cards and just were like dying laughing, and just it was like a perfect moment, and I was able to rest a lot and really step away from the business and from my brain off in that way. And so this was actually like a really beautiful, restful time. Part of it though is that we just as again, I'll sprinkle in little practical things that we learned because it's helpful for someone else too that might be listening. Is we had this idea of a cozy cabin trip with our kids, and we thought, we're gonna sit and read and play games and all this kind of stuff, and it's just so magical. And we learned really quick after we came home from the very first time we went on this trip. So we've now gone 4 years in a row, and we learned like that is sweet. It is not real, and it's a romantic thought, but it's not real life. And we came home from that first trip going, that was miserable. Like that was terrible. People asked us like, how was that trip? And I'm like, that was a waste of time and so terrible, because we thought we could like manufacture this magical moment. And what we learned was, like you said, it doesn't matter what your kids, we're always having to wrestle with like, is this a foster kid thing? Is this a kid from their specific situation? Is this a boy thing, a girl thing? Is this a normal kid thing? We don't really know like where's this coming from about when something goes wrong. And I'm pretty sure just all kids have lots of energy. I think that's just a genuine, normal general rule for life. And so what we learned was if we take them hiking every day, we go to a place where we can go hiking and go explore, and then we come back, then we can have those sweet moments where everybody's worn out and we're making hot cocoa and like doing like
Hmm.
the fun stuff. And so that's one part of it. The other part of it is more closely to your point about the duck thing was a great example that was COVID. So we actually got our kids. We met them May 29th, 2020. So it was in the very heart of the COVID pandemic when things were still shut down and, all that. We actually met them over a Zoom call. That's a whole other story, trying to talk to a 5-year-old on the Zoom call and say like, hey, I'm your new dad. That's okay, I think. But when they moved in with us, it was July 2020. And so school starts and the school gets shut down almost immediately, and every other week the kids are at home. If one of them got COVID, then the other ones would have to stay home. It was just like, and that was a real, you know, interesting thing for everybody in different ways. And especially if they're like when you're cooped up in the same house with each other, having to say like, how do we make this work? Like, how do we figure out how not to, yell at our kids because we're just anxious and overworked and exhausted. And I think there's that whole like principle of like, absence makes the heart grow stronger and all, or fonder or whatever. That is kind of applicable with kids too, where um while there's certain stages where they're going to be like on you at all moments, where there's definitely times too where the kids are like, I would like to get a break from mommy and daddy, and I would like to like, have not have you getting on to me all the time or looking over my shoulder all the time or that kind of stuff. And there's we can dive into kind of practical ways to handle that, but I think there's part of that that's just like it's not just the parents who are feeling that too. The kids are also feeling. My kids are now like, please send me back to school. Like I'm so bored this summer, of mommy and daddy, being in control of every single moment. Um, but my point being is that they feel it in a lot of ways too. That was a really rough moment for them where they couldn't get out from under our, ever watchful gaze. And they have a higher tolerance for it because they're looking to us to provide for them and provide to entertain them and all that kind of stuff. But it ran its course on them as well. And so it's like that thing of like, we all need to get out. We all need to kind of find our things that we can do because we're not meant to be in relationships. Even my wife and I, like, we love being around each other, but there's times when you're like, you know what? You sit over there and read your book, and I'm gonna sit over here and read my book or whatever. And that actually is more enjoyable sometimes than, the being on top of each other and, the having the long conversations or whatever. You need both at point. You need that balance of like um togetherness and breaks and stuff like that. So
I hear two things in what you just said. The first one is somehow adjusting your expectations, because as you said, the first time you went to the cabin, you were expecting a vacation, like something that was not real. Like there was no chance for it to happen. And I think we are all like that. We imagine situations with our families, sometimes with our friends, that are not reality, and then we get disappointed. So that's the first thing I hear in what you said. It's adjusting the expectations. And then the second thing that I hear is also adapting the schedule and the activities and like whatever you're planning to the people that are there. Right? If I go on vacation with just my wife, then I need to plan around what we want to be doing. If I'm going with friends, then maybe we're going to have different kinds of activities, such as relaxing and reading and whatever. But if I go with kids, maybe I should plan the vacation like a little bit strategically so that I know that the whole family gets the exercise, what you were describing, going for a long hike, and then in the evening we can like, switch it up a little bit and start reading and spending some cozy time together. So those are the two things maybe that I hear in what you're describing. I have to ask you what are the board games that you guys are playing?
Yeah, so they're in a really fun age right now. So like I tell my friends who because our kids are a little bit older for our age, I guess, than so all my friends have like toddlers and younger business, and so I'm always telling them like this is the golden moments, because like last night, for instance, my wife she had a small group at church, and so she left the house, and I'm just sitting there with the 4 kids at the table, and we're playing Phase 10, which is kind of like Uno. If anybody's ever played that, it's like a really, really
Yep.
fun game. But it's like it's kind of ruthless too. It's like it's fun that way. And so the kids are like dying laughing, and they're like, "You skipped," like we're just like let's all point at them and laugh, and they're like, just like whatever. It's just so fun. And so we they came back and they were just like ecstatic about some of the games. We brought some board games with us, but we play a lot of chess at our house. But we also play Ticket to Ride. We play this one
Of
called
course.
King of
Yeah.
Tokyo, which the kids love. Um, we play at the tavern. We play Phase 10, um, Sushiko, which is a really fun one that we hadn't played before. We haven't we immediately my wife like ordered them on Amazon, hadn't sent it to the house. So the moment we got back, we had these games and we were playing at the house, and then also Code Names, which is a really fun one that there's some games our kids are still struggling with reading in some ways, and that's part of their story. They were a little bit behind in school and whatnot, but so we're just getting into the ones where they can like read their cards that have like detailed things. But my youngest, Hosanna, she is 8 years old now, and she kind of still struggles with her reading, and so she always wants to be involved in those games. She's like, no, 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 like read it to me. I want to. Oh, yeah, she wants to play. But this little girl, oh my gosh, like she is a cutthroat killer when it comes to like any game. I mean, she will. We played Risk for the first time, and she beat me in Risk the very first time we played. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what is this little Attila the Hun that I'm raising here that can like, beat us all in a strategy war game at the age of like 7? But she just has a mind for that kind of thing. It's brilliant. And I'm like, I tell her, I'm like, that's one of God's gifts to you, that you have a strategic mind. Like she will beat us in every game we play her in. And she likes to let us know. I mean, she will be like, "In your face, Daddy," and trash talk us and stuff like that. So it's one of the fun,
How
it's been a
how
really
patient
fun thing.
how patient are you?
I'm pretty patient, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
I
pretty
think
patient.
this is a little bit of a struggle. I think when you want to play board games with kids, okay, the experience of course may vary depending on like the age of the kids and so on. But I see it with my daughter, for example. Even though I think she's very good at understanding rules when we play games and so on, it can take time to actually for her to actually like assimilate the rule and
Sure.
and I'm not a very patient person when it comes to this kind of stuff. So
Sure.
I guess what I'm trying to say is, of course, I can fake the patience. That's not. But for me to actually have fun, it's gonna take the kid to actually know how to play the game.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
do you struggle with that, or do you still have fun like whenever they don't,
Yeah,
even
no,
though
I
they
mean,
don't?
there's yeah, we have a stack of games that I cannot wait to play with my kids. I just know that we can't play them, and we've tried to like sit down. My son is really eager. He's a little brainiac kid who wants to. He looks over my shoulder when I'm coding, so that always wants to know. He wants to rise to the occasion, I think. And so he and I have talked about sitting down and learning some of the more complicated board. Like we're talking about, like one of my favorites is Root. It's by Letter Games. It's like this really complex. We have the Dune board game too from Frank Herbert's Dune, and things like that. And I'm like, man, I can't wait to play these with you. Stop playing with like other adults, and they're so much fun. We spent 4 hours on this big huge strategy game, but there's also like that's unreasonable, and learning how to go. I mean, honestly, one of the most fun things I did with my kids when they first moved in, and they still love it. It was a little game that me and some like kids made up in middle school, I think, which is literally like it's kind of like Dungeons and Dragons type thing where you're kind of creating a character and fighting or whatever, but it's all imaginary. And what we do is we just get some dice and we just draw a little character on a piece of paper. And the kids love it because they can come up with whatever they want. They're like, "My name is Mr. Doggy McDoggerson," or whatever, and they'll like draw a little
Uh,
character, and we'll get a little HP, and then we'll just roll the dice. And when we first did that, when they first moved in with us, they like we have like videos of them where they're like going heal, heal, heal. I'm like, okay, you can choose to heal or attack, like, and we're just making up the rules as we go, and like stuff like that, where it just you do have to adjust to what level they're at. Um, but you said a really important thing there, which I think that maybe someone who's not a parent may not understand, which is you said, I'm not having fun if they don't understand the rules, and it's really important for you to have fun. And I think that's the thing that I did not understand maybe coming into this was I'm going to lay myself down and self-sacrifice at this thing that the kid wants to do And there's a time for that. Certainly, there's a time to do tea parties with your little girl and stuff like that. Um, but if it's something that is going to be like worthwhile and you're going to build a relationship over, I think it has to be something that you can enjoy and and I do that when I'm not feeling like I come home from work and I'm stressed. It's maybe a concrete example. I think what thing would I really, really love and enjoy, and I would just get so much, I would have so much fun with, and
Mhm.
therefore they would have so much fun with. And for instance, we play chess at the house. I know you and your daughter do as well, and there's times when I can tell they're not having fun with this, and so I'm not gonna press it. I'm not gonna be like,
Mhm.
yeah, chess is hard, and there's days when I don't want to play,
Mhm.
But there's other times when it's like this is so much fun, and it's a battle, and it's a war, and we're laughing, we're trash talking, like, oh, I got your right, and it's
Mhm.
it's like so much fun. And I think that is so sustainable is to find things that you can communicate with your kids on. Legos is a good example. My kids have not gotten into Legos, and oh my gosh, I would love them to be into Legos. I loved Legos as a kid. I'm like, I loved the tinkering and putting it together. And then just this week, my son got a Lego set from one of his grandfathers, and suddenly, like, it ignited in his head, like, I want to build this Lego set. And I got so excited because I was like, this is something I'm not going to force you to do this day with me, but I feel like that's one of the things I looked forward to when I was, like, thinking about being a dad was, like, when I'm going to build Lego sets with my kids, and it'll be acceptable
Yeah.
again because although it is hospitable to play Legos, um, but I'm like, this would be a fun thing we can bond over. And I get really excited to, like, now I can, like it. And it's in that way, it brings the best out of me. It helps me be a really good dad to them. And we can really bond over something that we both enjoy. So,
But don't get me wrong, it's like it takes me to play with someone who knows the rules to really truly enjoy it. But at the same time, I can still enjoy it when they are learning the rules at times.
sure.
I think you were
Yeah.
talking, the example of chess is a good example. Like my daughter
Hmm.
is 4 and she's really good at chess already. That I think is a testimony of like the time that we spent together, like a lot of frustrating time because in the
Yeah.
beginning she was like, how does the horse move? I'm like, no.
Right.
You know that one.
Yeah.
But she learned very quickly, and even today, that's another topic that I would like to explore a little bit with you. So she loves chess and she wants to be good. She says, "I want
Mm.
to beat Magnus Carlsen." That's the goal.
Yeah, yeah. That's beautiful.
And no, actually, she told me 2 days ago. She said, "I want to beat Ikaru." I was like, "Okay,
That's
interesting."
right. Yeah.
But the point is, how difficult it is to learn chess, and you need
Hmm.
to train your eyes to recognize the patterns. We do a lot of chess puzzles, so I have like a chess set installed, always permanently living on the island in the kitchen, and I set up like a puzzle for her, and she does it, and when it's right, then I switch and put something else. Most of the puzzles that I make for her, they are made in one, so
Yeah, yeah.
relatively easy. But even made in one, you can make quite
Yeah,
complicated
for sure.
puzzles
Yeah.
with like discovery attacks and all these kind of things. And anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that yesterday I set up a chess puzzle for her that I think was a little bit too advanced. Like you
Mm.
needed to move the knight so that it would open the open the way for the tower and for the rook. Sorry, I'm speaking French now. For the rook, and she struggled with it like so long. Like she was really trying to solve it,
Mm.
and then she lost interest. She was starting to
Right.
look around and not looking at the board. And I told her, you're not gonna find the answer looking at like, the
Right,
dishes
right.
that is trying to dry next to the sink. And well, she couldn't find it. I told her you should take a break and maybe you'll get back to it and you'll find the solution. And she went back to it today. She couldn't find the answer. And that was a little bit of a struggle for me to decide, is it time for me to tell her to give up? Or should I continue pushing her? And I would say more generally, I'm starting to wonder how I'm going to, or how I should react when someday, and I know it's going to happen, I just don't know when someday she's going to tell me, I don't want to do chess puzzles anymore.
Mm.
Because
Mm.
I know that she wants to learn, and I think it's good to build discipline by having something that, even when it sucks, you sort of like power
Yeah.
through.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, like, like, is it something I'm gonna have to power through? How much do I need to power through? So those are my two things. I don't know if you have any takes. The first one is, how do you assess when it's time to maybe intervene and like uh, like say, okay, that's enough. You've searched for long enough. And then if the kid wants to stop, I don't know if you have like any. I don't know if chess is like that, for example, in your house.
Yeah.
Do you think about like you will tell them to continue and stick to it for a while to see if they really want to stop, or how do you think about that? Giving up in the
Yeah.
middle.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a couple of examples actually. So one, I mean, in that example, I mean, there's no reason why you can't say, okay, obviously, if this is a little too advanced, like, all right, would you like a hint? You do one hint, and then let's say if you can take a day and figure that out, and move from there. So I don't know if you're familiar with, I think it's pronounced Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, the guy on set. I think he's Hungarian. He came up with the idea of flow state, and the idea in his book Flow, he talked about um, the maximal flow state is difficult, where it's fun and challenging, but not so difficult that it's unsurmountable. And it sounds like in that situation, it's like in his argument, I don't know if it's true or not, but his argument is that human happiness thrives the most in a state of flow. And so when you're just over the place where it's even like you're watching a movie and it's a stupid movie and you're watching it and you're like, this is actually making me feel dumber for having watched it, versus one where you're like, this is so heavy that I just can't approach this movie. I don't want to watch this. Like it's like weighing me down. Where you get to one where you're like, ooh, I don't know what's gonna happen. That's where like action movies and thrillers and those sort of things thrive, is that state of like um calling you a little bit higher, but not so high that you're like exhausted by the end of the movie. And so we do Taekwondo in our family. There's like a Taekwondo studio across the street from us, and when they moved in, we were looking for just like an easy thing for them to do exercise. And it's literally like we could walk there. It's really close. They've done an incredible job with our kids like throughout their whole fostering and adoption and stuff like that. And them, my kids can be physical sometimes, and their behavioral issues, and so learning how to manage their bodies and stuff like that was really really helpful. But Taekwondo is hard, and it's not. It's not something that the beautiful thing about it is it's got ranks, and it's got belt ranks. You start at a white belt, and then the different schools will change how the colors work, but you end up at a black belt. And my kids, of course, were like, I want to be a black belt. So cool to be a black belt. I want to be a black belt. But they learned really quickly that they you get to a certain level and you hit a ceiling where if you're not serious about it and it crosses over from fun activity into pursuit, disciplined pursuit, you don't go any further. And I've seen a bunch of kids do that in the time that we've been there. And there was a really cool it served as a really great example in our household because we use it for everything now. Where I'll say, just like how when you're a white belt, my oldest daughter got her purple belt this week, which means that she's like 3 belts away from a black belt. And she has told me a time, or I've picked up on time that she's almost done with doing it. She's clearly, her younger sister is like now a volunteer there and like helps out and stuff like that and like teaches the little kids. But my oldest daughter actually is kind of like, I say it's like when you're at a party and you're looking over the person's shoulder that you're talking to and you're like, this is good for now, but I'm trying to see what else is there. And I've told her, I said, sweetheart, if you want to stop Taekwondo, um, and do something else, then that's absolutely fine. But you got to do something. I need you to give your attention to something, and if it's, she said, my friends are playing volleyball, and I was like, great, let's look at volleyball, and you can try that. But you have to commit to something and see it through, even when it gets hard, because that's when you push through that ceiling, and that's when you really, really start to love the thing that you're doing. Is exactly what you're describing. And it's interesting because when the kids start in Taekwondo, um, the teachers don't hardly critique them at all. They just let them kick. They're like, kick with your right leg, and they're like, they'll tell them like, if you're not attempting, they'll tell you like, hey, let's actually punch or whatever. But they don't critique them at all. And when we first started, it was really interesting because I thought, why don't they tell them like that kick is obviously wrong? Like, why don't they correct it? And so I asked the instructor afterwards. I said, I'm not making a judgment. I'm just curious. Why do you do that? And he said, because what we want more than anything is for them to have fun when they come. because if they have fun, then they'll learn how to work through the difficult moments because they love this so much. It's fun. And if we begin by stamping down their enthusiasm, or now I think you had a post about this like a year ago about like if you share your ideas and then you get too practical and like the fire gets put out really quickly or something like that. And it's the same sort of thing where I'm like, there is a level of, I think it's a good, especially for the role of maybe a father, if I could say that, is to be lovingly tough on your kids about like, my son asked me, there's a sparring class where they probably cut it. And he asked me for when he first started, I want to spar, I want to spar, I want to spar. It looks like it's fun, I want to spar. And I said, you're not ready for it yet, but when you're ready, I will absolutely let you do it. And he kept asking me over and over and over. So the day that I think it was like at Christmas, I told him like I gave him his gear for sparring. He has the whole like chest guard and that. And so for Christmas, I said, you get to join the sparring class. And he was thrilled. Fast forward a few months, it's like, hey guys, we have sparring tonight. And he goes, ugh. And I said, what's that about? And he goes, I'm tired. And I said, buddy, it's the middle of summer. There's no reason you should be tired. Like, what are you talking about? You haven't done anything today, And there's like, no, you're going to go sparring because you asked for this and you love it. And when you get done, I'm going to ask you, was it fun? That was so much fun. And I had moments in my childhood where I hit a wall. And my dad asked me, do you want to stop? And I said, yes. And he let me stop. And I'm not bitter towards him about that, but I'm like, man, why did you listen to me? I was a kid. I didn't know what I was saying. And I would have thrived if I would have kept going. But instead, I gave up. And you let me give up. So there's a balance there, obviously. And every kid's different. But there's certainly like you have to play both. It's not just like, I'm being a mean parent if I push my kids off. I'll give one more quick example. At our church, my oldest daughter is in the youth group, and the youth pastor challenged all of them. And he said, "This is just raise your hand if you want to do it, and everyone close your eyes." So that way, he said, I don't want you to do it because your friends are doing it, but if anyone wants to read the New Testament through in 21 days, raise your hand. And I want you to raise your hand. I'll see it. And I'm going to write your name down on my phone. And I'll text your parents and talk to them about it. But I want to know if you want to do it, don't worry about if your friends are doing it or not. So my daughter raises her hand and she comes home and tells me, Daddy, I'm going to read the New Testament for 21 days. I'm like, that's a big feat. So we did the math. I'm like, that's about 13 chapters a day. And I was like, I'm super proud of you for even saying yes to that, and whatever. And I'm thinking in the back of my mind, I don't know if she's going to be able to do it. That's a lot of reading every day, and this is in the middle of school. So she had to do it. And she had just started middle school. She was in sixth grade, a whole new school, a whole new set of responsibilities. And so I'm like, I don't know if she's going to follow through. So I think it's really cool that she is taking this on. So after a few days, I'm asking her, like, did you do your readings today? Or, just kind of keeping her accountable. And I printed them off from a sheet board, try to help her get started. And my wife goes, do you feel like she's doing that because she thinks that you would be proud of her if she did it? And I said, that's it's a really good thing. A really good thought. And so the approach that I came to, and then again, she's called at the time, so it is a little bit different. But I said, sweetheart, I sat her down and I said, I want you to know that I'm still proud of you for even saying yes to this big challenge. And whether you accomplish it or not, that's super huge. One day you'll do it, I said, but I want to know, do you want me to keep you accountable? Because I've been asking you, did you do your readings today? I said, or would you rather that I just kind of like let you do it and you can kind of run it she goes, I want you to ask me every day. It'll help me to get it done. I said, sure. Then now you give me permission. And she had a moment where she faltered and she lied about doing her readings. And I kind of caught her on it. And I sat her down again. I said, listen, if you don't feel like this is the time for you to do it, you're in the middle of school and you're too busy. I said, no big deal. I'm super proud of you. But if you're going to commit to this, let's talk about that. And let's figure out how to come back from here and help her get back on track and just kind of come alongside of her. And I think there's that balance, like I said, of being a loving parent who pushes them when you can see that they're hitting that pain button where they're like, this is now hard. I want you to be the kind of person you can do hard things, but also not pushing so much that you're like inflicting your will upon your kids. And that's my so.
I recognize the experience of being a kid. I was interested in everything, and I wanted to play the drums, I wanted to play the piano, I wanted to play football, and I wanted to do like karate or whatever. Like I wanted I wanted to do everything, and of course some of it was that I wanted to hang out with my friends, and my friends were doing different activities. But I think a lot of it is that when you're a kid, you're searching yourself, and you're
Yeah.
trying to figure out like what do you like, what you don't like. And I want to say that some of these, I think, could have been neutered, if I can say that. Like my parents could have said,
Mm.
like, no, you want to play the drums, so you're gonna play the drums. But I'm not sure it would have been a good thing. Like I'm a little bit
Yeah.
ambivalent because there is part of me that feels like, oh man, I wish I have like a drum kit here next to me, and I'm like, I wish I was better at using it. I can drum a little bit, but I wish I was actually good. I can play a little bit the piano, but I wish I was actually good at playing the
Mm.
piano. So there is part of me that feels like, oh, I wish I was pushed. And then there's this
Yeah.
other side of me, which is I might have been miserable if they had pushed me, or worse, like it could have been like just like as I said, nurturing. Is this what I said? Yeah, nurturing. Like it could have
Yeah.
killed.
You.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nurturing this like this meta skill that I have that allows me to switch quickly between things
Yeah.
and develop interest in things very quickly and abandon them as well quickly, which is it's like everything in life, right? It's both like a blessing and a curse because sometimes I quit maybe a little bit too soon, but I have this capacity of like actually learning things very quickly and moving on very quickly to something else that is also precious. Like we are not meant to be the same. Like some people are meant to be extremely good at like what they do in like one specific field, and we need like people that maybe have the ability to be a little bit more like generalists.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's fine. The other thing that I'm thinking about when you talk about that is how uh, you were saying like you were talking about like how when you watch a movie or something like that you want to be challenged a little bit. You were talking about this flow state, and I was thinking it's actually quite first, it can be difficult for you to assess if you are in this flow state because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you don't recognize it in the moment. Sometimes you do, depending a little bit on your
Yeah.
own awareness and let's say experience as well. But sometimes you don't. Sometimes it's just like you're tired, you're in the flow state, but you don't know that you're in the flow state. And then I was wondering, is it even possible to know if someone else is in a flow state? I can assume, I can probably try to guess when I see my daughter really focusing on the chessboard. I can think like right now she's not looking around, maybe she's in a flow state. But it's very difficult to assess if someone else is really in a flow state because she might be looking at the chessboard and just thinking about unicorns. Like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
no, I have no idea. So, do you have any thoughts about that? Like, how do you bring
Yeah.
someone else to flow state, and if you don't know that, but how can you assess if someone is in a flow state? Is there any way to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. We've had this specific conversation, my wife and I, about wanting to help the kids find their thing, in quotes. And it's exactly what we're talking about. I love that you use these examples from your childhood because I also took like a bunch of great examples. I took guitar lessons and I hated it. Absolutely hated it. I was like 10 years old at the time, took guitar lessons. And I did it because my family has a history of music, musicality in it, and my grandfather was like this accomplished musician and stuff, and so my dad really wanted me to be the next, Howard guy, it's all music. And I did it because I understood that that was what was required of me. I hated it, and I didn't learn hardly anything. I couldn't tell you anything that I learned then. Fast forward to when I was maybe 14 or 15, and I pick up the guitar, and I can't put it down again. And I get really good compared to where I was. And now I've stopped learning the guitar since then. So now I'm just as good as I was probably when I was like 18 years old. But I still play the guitar all the time. And the difference was it. I'm exactly in the boat that you were, where it's like, and I think that's maybe it's part of the entrepreneurial spirit where
Yeah.
you are good at kind of jumping around. I have become aware of like a little gratitude for that, where I'm like. I like that I'm able to like change gears and stuff like that. And it's really helpful. But my point is that it took me stumbling back on the guitar for myself in order to fall in love with it, where I would literally spend the entire day,
Hmm.
every waking moment in high school, if I'm not, I didn't do extracurricular stuff at school, but I consumed my after hours after school playing guitar nonstop in my room. Just that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a master. I mean, I don't think I had any aspirations. I just loved playing. And so, for me, it was in the distinction between people who are really good at reading music and sitting in class and learning those sorts of things, which I would never get at school, honestly. And people who are, when I started to code, exact same thing. I almost failed my computer programming class in high school, but I could sit for hours and code at home. And I was a self-driven person who, maybe it's because my dad didn't push me or whatever. I had to be self-driven. I feel like that probably could have gone the other way, where I'm like, I'm not driven because no one ever pushed me. So there's probably that balance there. But again, I think it goes back to that, to your question about whether you can tell or not. My wife and I have discussed this about our kids, where we say, my daughter's like, I'm going to join band now that I'm in middle school, and I'm going to play the trumpet. And I'm like, that's random. It just doesn't seem like the instrument fits, But I'm like, go for it. If you're going to play trumpet, I can play trumpet. That's great. So she gets the trumpet. She plays for half the semester, and then she goes, "Daddy, they're going to let me play the French horn at the switch." I said, "Okay, well, first off, French horn is a much more beautiful instrument when you're starting out, not nearly as annoying for a beginner." So yes, I was like, I will fully support this, but there's still that indication that it's not. She doesn't get lost in the practice, which is very understandable. Not Doesn't hurt my feelings or anything like that. Um, as opposed to times where you'll see the kids. We send them to bed 30 minutes early and say you have to do a quiet time in your room just to wind down from the day and be by yourself. And what they choose to do during that 30-minute quiet time is a great indicator of what their thing is right now and what their flow state is. My youngest does fast. She will always get some glue out and some paper and immediately will jump right in, and you will not hear her come out of her room one time. The whole rest of the day, it's like running around, chaos, all that stuff. In that moment, she is like locked in and focused on her crafts and art and stuff like that. So I'm like, hey, there's a little note. Rosanna
Yeah.
likes to do art. So I'm going to give her opportunities to explore that more. Um, for back to the Lego example, I give my kid Legos, and they're like two pieces, and like, this is boring, and they get up and leave or whatever because it's way too challenging, I guess. And so it's like there's not a flow state there, and so you can with kids you absolutely can tell. I think when you're like, um, this is something that you're advocate towards, and we'll find them reading now. That's a big thing that I probably talk a whole podcast on has been our journey in reading, because our kids could hardly read and then moved in with us. Now they read all the time, and I'll walk by and my heart leaps when I find them with a book, and especially my second oldest, who still struggles a lot with her reading, but she like would throw full on like tantrums and cry and everything we try to ever get her to read, and we're like, how hard do we push? How far? How exactly the thing you're asking about? Like, what do we? I don't know. She has to learn how to read. And
I
we
have to
kind of
ask you,
give up.
hold on, I have to ask you something. Do you actually
Yeah, yeah.
stamp your kids' books as well? Because maybe I was very surprised
Oh,
when you sent me this book and you have your how did you call it,
yeah.
the ex libris or
Uh, it's not. It's yeah. Ex Libris, the Howard. To fill in everybody else, there's like I said, read a book recently and put in the cover of it. We have a book plate, I guess is what they're called, where it shows it's from our library. So I guess that's like the traditional thing that people would have in their book plates. So out of the library of in Latin, and so for a Christmas gift one year, I did. My wife and I are big readers. We have tons of books and stuff like that, and so. Um, I bought her that, and she had so much fun. Oh my gosh! Like for a whole day, she's just
this
like
is
pulling out
awesome.
books, and she's like, "Is this one stampable, or is this like I need to go take it back to the thrift store and get rid of it?" And so our kids every once in a while will get it and stamp their books as well, or whatever. And so they're a little more fleet. We do a lot of we go to the library almost every single weekend, and so I don't know how common public libraries are in the world, but I mean I think that's probably a thing everywhere, right? Like so here in America we have a wonderful public library system, and so we have one right across the street from our house. We go every weekend, and the kids get a stack of books and movies and audiobooks and all sorts of fun things. And so they're pretty voracious in their reading now, which is a lot of fun. So
I was smiling about the French horn story because I like the French horn. I think it's a fantastic instrument, and sometimes from time to time during mass at the church that I go to, they actually have someone play the French horn. And I talked to her a couple
Oh,
of
yeah.
times, and she's just like a fantastic human being. And my daughter has been really interested in the French horn after she heard it during mass. So we watched like a couple of videos of people playing French horn, and I was smiling because a couple of days ago I actually wrote a new essay for Papa Nuts, and it talks about the example that I gave is like a kid trying to learn the French horn. So so that was completely random, but
I think I have my daughter record a video of her playing, and I'll send it to you guys to just
oh
set this
yeah,
up.
oh yeah, that would be super fun. Yeah, that's good. Thank you, brother.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time today.